Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Hedgehog Company webinar on how to assess your business carbon footprint. Um, the schedule for today, we will start with a short introduction, and then we will go into some of the theories regarding a carbon footprint. So, answering the question, what is a business carbon footprint? Then we'll dive into how to assess your business carbon footprint with the Hedgehog Carbon dashboard. And we will end up on how to use the insights of this business carbon footprint in your organization. And of course, by the end, there's also some room for some questions. But let's start first with a small introduction. My name is Joost Walterbos. I am one of the co-founders of Hedgehog Company. I'm here today with my colleague Clara. She is not visible, but she's here to help me on the technical side of this webinar. Hedgehog Company, who are we? Who we guide? We are a team of sustainability entrepreneurs. And we guide organizations in their transition towards a sustainable performance. Well, who are these organizations? In general, we can put them under three pillars. And our main focus is on business, so helping businesses and business organizations in this sustainability transition, on regulation, on intrinsic motivations to become more future-proof, or for whatever reasons they have. Besides, just in short, how are we involved in guidance in construction? In the Dutch construction sector, we are doing a lot of knowledge projects and other stuff to support the sustainability transition, mainly focused on bio-based construction. And in the finance sector, we are co-writing and co-developing a so-called compass for sustainable finance, which is going to be a theoretical framework on assessments of carbon footprint assessments in financial portfolios. However, today we are here focusing on the business pillar of our organization. So what it is, what we do, where our key value propositions in sustainability. We are very focused on data-driven guidance. So we're really specialized in all types of impact assessments, like carbon footprints, like life cycle assessments, organizational footprints, and the like. In addition, another key proposition of ours is creative communication, because of course, when you have these data, when you have these insights, how do you communicate them so that everyone understands them, both internally as external stakeholders? And finally, of course, there is no sustainability without some action. So a final thing that we help our clients with are clear climate solutions. However, the latter two are really following from the first one, the data-driven guidance, which is really core to our organization. Also, the Hedgehog Carbon dashboard, which we are discussing today, is basically a result or a baby from data-driven guidance and this aspect of communication. So how are you, or how can we facilitate the understanding of carbon footprints for an organization and its stakeholders? So having said that, let's dive in. We only have about an hour. So let's quickly dive into the first question. What is a business carbon footprint? A business carbon footprint is basically a footprint, an inventory of all your greenhouse gas emissions that follow from your business activities. We express a business carbon footprint in CO2 equivalents, and this means that whatever greenhouse gas emission we are calculating or we are assessing in our carbon footprint, we translate that emission to the emission or the effect on global warming by CO2. So what does that mean in practice? For example, when I'm an organization emitting 1 kilogram of methane, 1 kilogram of methane, or methane in general, is 18 times as strong in greenhouse gas warming or global warming compared to CO2. And hence, when we are emitting 1 kilogram of methane, we are in our business carbon footprint, or in our carbon footprint, we are stating 18 kilograms of CO2 equivalent. Same goes for laughing gas, or N2O. It's 265 times as potent for global warming compared to CO2. So when we have 1 kilogram of N2O emitted by an organization, we say in our carbon footprint 265 kilogram of CO2 equivalents. Now, what does this mean? When we are communicating a business carbon footprint, we are speaking of the global warming potential of your organization. So really the contribution to global warming that your business activities or your organizational activities have. Then something on the theoretical framework. So we are mostly speaking here of the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, also known as the GHG Protocol. This is a protocol, or a calculation framework, or accounting framework actually, that is reported or delivered by the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And it is currently globally the most adopted carbon accounting framework, and it supports your process in carbon accounting, in calculating and assessing, data analysis, and of course in reporting as well. So basically, when we compare it to financial accounting, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol is like the IFRS standards are for financial accounting. The GHG Protocol is for carbon accounting. Finally, one very important thing to keep in mind is, like financial accounting, your carbon footprint is dynamic, and this means that it varies over the years, it varies over the period, varies per month even, and due to the amount of activities or seasonal changes, the amount of production or the amount of people that are in the office are all affecting your carbon footprint. You must keep in mind that this footprint therefore also changes over the period. So back to the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, and a very, very common topic when we're speaking of a carbon footprint is the scopes, the scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. These are simply put, these are predetermined categorizations of emission sources in your company or in your organization's value chain or supply chain. And these are, as said, predetermined by the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. When you look at the bottom, you see this bar, horizontal bar. In the middle, there's a green bit stating the reporting company. And on top, there is a green arrow to the sky with scope 1 direct emissions. So when we're speaking of scope 1 direct emissions, these are direct emissions of greenhouse gases from your company's assets. So we are categorizing those in two. Company facilities is the one. So for example, you're having an office building, you're there with your team. It's getting cold outside, you want to put on the heater, you have natural gas flowing into your office building, it's going into the boiler, and it heats the water. You are warm and your team as well, and on the roof of your building there is a little exhaust pipe where the greenhouse gas is emitted. Same goes for company vehicles. You have an exhaust pipe on your vehicle, you're putting in diesel or gasoline, the car drives, or you're driving the car, and GHG emissions are flowing out of the exhaust pipe. When we are looking to our left, at the bar in the bottom, the horizontal bar, you can see upstream activities. And when you're looking at the most left arrow, the shaded one, with scope 2 indirect sources, there is only one source there, and it states purchased electricity, steam, heating and cooling for own use. So these are sources that are direct energy consumption. However, the emission of greenhouse gas is at another location. So electricity being the most common, you have a desktop or a monitor, you are putting the plug in the socket in the wall, directly consuming the electricity. However, the greenhouse gas emissions that are being emitted during the production of that electricity are occurring at another site, namely the natural gas power plant, for example. Finally, we have both upstream activities and downstream activities, scope 3, indirect use of energy, and also indirect emissions. And this is basically everything in the supply chain or value chain of your organization. Just to name some examples, we have purchase goods and services. When we're at the left blue arrow all the way on the left, you see purchase goods and services. So everything that your company is procuring, from food in the canteen to the materials that you use in production, are under that emission category, and are, for many organizations, especially when we're speaking of manufacturers or producers, that is a very large emission source. When we're moving a few categories to the right, almost on the right side of that same arrow, we can see employee commuting or business travel. So for many service organizations, for example, service providers, these two are very important categories because relatively they contribute a lot to the carbon footprint. Another example from the right side, downstream activities. Again, when we're producing, especially when we're producing electronic equipment, so anything with a plug or a battery, you can see the category use of sold products. Well, there's the energy consumption of the products during the full life cycle are to be reported under that category. Also, as you can imagine, probably, and this determines, it's basically a rule of thumb for about 90% of the organizations, scope 1 and scope 2 are just a tip of the iceberg. Only when we're looking at really energy intensive companies or organizations, so name for example a steel manufacturer in the west of the Netherlands. These are organizations that are very energy intensive, and therefore scope 1 and 2 are actually quite large. However, as mentioned, as a rule of thumb for almost all organizations, scope 3 is by far the largest, up to 80-90% of the total carbon footprint. So next question, how to assess your business carbon footprint with the Hedgehog Carbon Dashboard. So with the knowledge just provided in the back of your head, how are you actually going to assess your business carbon footprint? For the sake of this explanation of clarity, I have come up with a nice 3-step approach. 3 steps are always the easiest to understand, so also in this case. Starting in step 1, the determination of the scope of your study. So this is really answering the question, what is the system of analysis that I'm going to do my carbon footprint upon? What sources am I going to include? What sources am I going to exclude? These sources, as mentioned in the theoretical bit, are adopted from the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. So again, you can see the figure on the right. And basically in this step, you are going by all these categories listed, and are going to take them into account in your assessment, yes or no. This sounds quite easy, but of course, this is also a bit of an arbitrary process, and therefore also regulated by the GHG protocol. Basically, what the GHG protocol is stating is that companies shall account for all scope 3 emissions, besides scope 1 and 2, of course, all scope 3 emissions, and disclose and justify any exclusions. Hence, when we're looking at this figure, we are taking every scope into account. Only per scope that we are excluding, we must justify that decision. The justification of these decision is also explained in the GHG protocol, and basically there's a list of criteria whether you can or for you to exclude these emission sources. Important one is, of course, the size of the emission source. Another important one, of course, is the influence you have as an organization on that scope 3 emission in your value chain, but also the risk that your company is contributing to global warming. What your stakeholders found important. Also outsourcing activities, as there can be like sector guidance papers written, white papers where a sector states these are the emission sources that you must include or can exclude. And of course, there are some other criteria as well. So, in short, start with all the emission sources and then justify any exclusions that you want to leave out. So we are here, of course, to support you in your first self-made business carbon footprint with our Hedgehog Carbon Dashboard. And to facilitate this process, we have made a list of emission sources that everyone must include in his or her first business carbon footprint. These are, of course, all scope 1 emissions, all scope 2 emissions, and then to basically support all, at least all the service organizations, also business travel and employee commuting. All these emission sources are available in the free version of our Hedgehog Carbon Dashboard. And as you will also find out later, at the moment that you want to include other scope 3 sources, for example, because you are a production or a manufacturer of anything, these emission sources tend to become very specific for your organization. And that's where we prefer to join in and guide your organization towards getting a real understanding of your business carbon footprint. So if we're zooming back out to the figure of the GHG protocol, of the greenhouse gas protocol, and simply circling the emission sources that are available in the free version of the Hedgehog Carbon Dashboard. Voila, here they are. So after you have demarcated your scope and determined what the system boundaries are of your initial carbon footprint, you are not yet going to step 2, but first you are going to set up a session with your team. Find a few colleagues who are whether or not interested in this topic, doesn't really matter. You need their review, their feedback on the decisions of excluding specific sources from your carbon footprint, so that you can have a dialogue and have an extra set of eyes on this demarcation, on the scope determination. If you finish that, then you can go to the second step, the step of data collection. In this step, you will have to collect to multiple colleagues, but also to supply chain partners. And this step is in any project that we are contributing to or where we are guiding our clients, but also when clients are, when people are using a carbon dashboard or doing their first business carbon footprint, data collection is by far the most complex process. So what does it involve? First and foremost, data collection is very much about connecting to the right people. When you're doing the free version, so to say, of the business carbon footprint, or when you're a service organization or whatever, you will mostly be involved only with internal stakeholders. And get in touch with people at different departments of your organization to gather the right information and transform and collect that information and transform it into usable data. Second, of course, especially when you're diving more in the supply chain, we're also looking at external stakeholders, mostly suppliers and maybe other stakeholders like users or end consumers. So what are potential sources? I've listed just a few that came out of from the top of my mind. But think of invoices and bills, think of kilometer registration systems for business travel and employee commuting, think of your enterprise resourcing software to gather information. Think of your colleagues at the administration, at HR, at the procurement, or go to your financial department and request the ledgers on procurement. Then there is, of course, what kind of data are we looking for? I mean, we're speaking of data the whole time, but what is this data? First of all, we are mostly looking for physical units before monetary units. You can do with monetary units, but as you will see in our dashboard and also is with us as an organization, we want to focus on the physical units because those give us more, higher quality insights into your carbon footprint compared to monetary assessments. In the Hedgehog Carbon dashboard, you'll see what the actual units are that we're looking for. So we're diving into that in a little bit. Again, I've noted in the beginning, keep in mind your reporting period. So also when you're gathering information and your financial year, for example, is from July to July, also collect the information from July to July, because otherwise there is a discrepancy between your reporting and your activities. And finally, I've called it an audit trail, call it a data collection logbook, call it your notes, whatever, but please keep track of all your assumption, all your data sources, and combine these, first of all, to include in your carbon footprint report, but also to write them down for yourself, that if you want to do a reassessment or the following reporting period, carbon footprint, for the next month or the next year, that you have this protocol, data collection protocol there that you can use, and that you can then re-walk the same routes that you did in the previous period. Of course, a webinar or this webinar is nowhere without a nice case study to get everything a little bit more clear. So I've developed a case study of a nice company called Peters Incorporated. Peters Incorporated has an office building in the Netherlands and an assembly site in the Netherlands, and is a assembler or producer a producer of Hedgehog night lights, which you can see on the right side. So what are the main activities? They are procuring components, assembling these on their assembly site in the Netherlands, and then when the products are assembled, they're shipped to retailers and e-tailers. Peters Incorporated has produced 60,000 lamps in the month October of 2023, so it's quite a big organization. When you look into the left side, there is a print screen of a spreadsheet that I've already filled in. So this is my data collection sheet that I have used for Peters Incorporated. You can predetermine while doing your scope demarcation, you can predetermine, of course, what inputs you are looking for based on the emission sources and the scopes. And then write the out in your spreadsheet or your Microsoft Excel or whatever you're using to facilitate and organize your data collection period. So when we're going quickly from top to bottom, first we have the office building and the assembly site, of course. There is an electricity consumption there, which is split into two because we have some solar panels on our roof. And of course, solar panels are producing renewable or green electricity. So there's 643 kilowatt hours, and we have an energy supplier or electricity supplier where we have an additional 2,103 kilowatt hours. It's always important to find out who your electricity supplier is, to find out whether the electricity that you're consuming is green or gray or unknown, of course. In addition to that, we are using natural gas in our assembly site from supplier Y with an amount of 8,907 cubic meters of natural gas. We're having a lot of air conditionings because it's very warm in the Netherlands, and it's leaking refrigerants. So we have consumed 2 kilograms of refrigerant in our October 2023. Was a very warm October. We're using district heating, 756 gigajoules, and we have forklifts driving around with these LPG tanks on the back, consuming 712 liters of LPG in October 2023. Then we have the company vehicles. Same goes there for the electricity. You must know whether it's green or gray. Well, a lot of the electric vehicles, of course, are mixed at different charging stations. So that's when you report for a mix of energy where you don't know whether it's green or gray, but it's the average energy or electricity of a specific company. Gasoline and diesel are straightforward. You fill in the liters, which are hopefully found on your fuel card administration or any other kind of kilometer registration system. We have business travel. I will dive a little bit more into those when we're on the actual dashboard, but make a distinction between train, between planes, but also the distance between planes, and always list down passenger kilometers. So when 2 people are taking the same flight, you are finding out what the amount of kilometers for that flight or for the train ride is, and then multiply it by the amount of passengers that are taking that journey. Then we are going, also small note, of course, to the Pro version, but then we are going to the Scope 3 emissions that are not included in the free version. We have the logistics of supplies for our Hedgehog lamp production. We have the production or the purchased goods and services themselves. And that's also why I was mentioning that when you're going for the Pro version, we prefer to be there to put the input, because then we are calculating, okay, what is the purchase goods and purchase goods necessary for this specific Hedgehog light, and how many kilograms of CO2 is there per product. So we've calculated for this case that there is 350 grams of CO2 equivalents per purchased goods that are needed for the production of one single lamp. And therefore, when we are in the dashboard, we're filling in the units. Then we have the downstream activities, of course, the logistics of our end products to the retailer and the e-tailers. And finally, there's the use of sold goods, because our lamps are consuming electricity, and we've calculated that there is a 1.7 kilowatt hours over the full lifetime of a lamp, of an Hedgehog lamp. So finally, you might think we are switching from presentation because we are going to do our carbon footprint assessment in the Hedgehog Carbon Dashboard. So how do you do that? You go to dashboard hhc.earth. There's probably a pop-up showing in your presentation right now. Then you sign up when you don't have an account yet, or you're logging in. You take your data collection form. So preparation is key. Make sure that you have your data collection fully filled before filling it in the dashboard. And here again, double check with your team, because errors are easily made. So let me quickly get out of this presentation and dive into the dashboards. So, all right, that should do the trick. Okay, give me one other second because I have been locked out. Yes. There we are. Another important thing to note about our dashboard is that we are working with a passwordless login system. So you do not have to remember your password, but you are requesting a code which is sent to your email address, and then that code is valid for only 1 hour, and then lets you log in into your dashboard environment. When you are logging in for the first time, you'll end up in the environment like this. So you get a get started pop-up with press the button below to start calculating, of course, because you have not yet filled in any data, and that's something that you need to do first. When you are creating your account for the Hedgehog Carbon dashboard, you are following the sign up flow, and you get a few questions in the beginning. These questions are on the database that you want to use, and on the reporting frequency that you want to follow. So when you are in the environment, you have the navigation menu on the left, and you can change those questions, those settings again by going to settings. There's the data management tab. So over here you can choose whether you want to monitor your business carbon footprint on a monthly basis or on a yearly basis. If you just want to make one business carbon footprint, of course, this choice doesn't really matter, because both will fit. But at the moment that you really want to track your progress over time, make your decision here to make sure that it is aligned with what you want to achieve from your monitoring frequency. Second, then there's the database. When you're a Dutch organization, take the NL database, Netherlands. When you are an English organization or anywhere around the world, then take the English database, which is probably a little bit more representative. If you are in any other nation, please get in touch, because we can always build an additional database that is then suitable for your organization. For now, we have our our data collection spreadsheet with all the information. And then we are going to put in the information in our Hedgehog Carbon dashboard. Currently, I'm over here at the bottom, or at the top. You can see in what scope you are. You have the main emission sources here, and then the individual emission sources listed here. Please do not forget to click on this little arrow, otherwise you won't see them. On the units are listed just next to your input shield. So, for example, when I'm consuming 100 cubic meters of natural gas, I'm filling in 100 here. If you are consuming 100 liters of natural gas, please do not forget to transform those liters to 0.1 cubic meters, or that's not even correct, but to the right unit, which is listed on the right side. Same goes for propane, for example. It's very common that these propane come in tanks. Do not fill in the amount of tanks, but fill in the amount of tanks multiplied by the amount of liters to get to the right unit, which is listed here for propane to be in liters as well. Additionally, there is some information here listed in the question marks. This information is a bit on what is the emission source that you're looking at. There are some tips on where you can find this information, at what department, and where the emission reference is coming from. So any additional information is listed under the question marks on the right side. Of course, for the sake of this webinar, I have already pre-filled all the information so that you do not have to look at me filling in all the data. So when I am switching to the tab in October here at the right top, you can see the same information that we were just looking at when we were looking at my data collection spreadsheet, or Excel sheet if you want. When I filled in all my scope 1 emissions, you can press enter or the save button or whatever you want, and switch to the next step, which is here scope 2. In scope 2, we had some district heating, for example, in gigajoules. We had some green electricity from our solar panels on the roof, and we had some average mix electricity from our supplier and from our electric vehicles. If you want to have those separated, again, we build tailor-made databases, so tailor-made input fields per organization in our Pro version. So reach out to us and we can tell you all about how detailed we can go. And we will show that to you in a little bit, of course, as well. Again, here we are looking at the different emission sources in business travel. So I promise to get back to the different distances shortly. When you look here, we had a flight from Amsterdam to Gothenburg, which is just below 700 kilometers. So all the flights that we are taking, which were 5 in and 5 out, more or less, all flights that were taken must be the total distance must be accounted or summed up and then reported up in this category of flights, airplane regional. The reason that these are separated is that because takeoff and landing during an airplane flight is relatively high in the consumption of kerosene, and therefore shorter flights are per kilometer with a higher emission factor of greenhouse gas emissions. Also, the employee commuting is a free emission source in our dashboard, in the free version of the dashboard. However, in the current in the case study for us, there is no employee commuting taken into the calculation. So what we did take into the calculation, of course, was the impact following the production and assembly of our Hedgehog nightlights. So there we have to switch to the Pro version of our case study. So here is the Peters Incorporated database. We're selecting the database, pressing save. And then when we switch back to our Manage Data tab, we go to Scope 3, and you can see here now a longer list of emission categories. Business travel and employee commuting we've already discussed. The ones interesting here are then the downstream transportation and distribution. Here we are listing the ton kilometers of our logistics. So that's the weight times the amount of kilometers that this is shipped. And we have the lamp production, so the purchase goods and services. How many resources do we need for our lamps? As I mentioned, we have calculated via a product impact assessment what the embodied carbon emissions are of our raw materials. We came up with to 350 grams per unit. So what am I filling in here are the amount of units that we have produced in our reporting period, which is October in 2023. Then we have, of course, the other transportation. Sorry, I mixed up downstream and upstream. This is upstream, here is downstream, because it's an alphabetical sequence. So we're listing again there the amount of ton kilometers of how much weight and how much kilometer the trucks are driving. And finally, of course, we had the use of sold products. So we have determined that there was 1.7 kilowatt hours of electricity per lamp, all consumed in the Netherlands. So we're filling in 60,000 units that have been sold, produced and sold in October, and that are having an expected lifetime energy or electricity consumption of 1.7 kilowatt hours. And this is also something that is arranged under the GHG protocol. So, of course, this is the interesting and boring stuff, filling in the data. But when you have achieved all this, you can finally go to your dashboard to your overview, where there now no more is a warning that you still have to fill in the data, to see the actual overview of your carbon emissions. So as I mentioned, the Hedgehog Carbon Dashboard is really a monitoring. It's a business carbon calculator, but it's also a monitoring tool. So you are monitoring your carbon footprint over time. And this also means that when we are looking here at the bottom of the page, we can see the impact over time. And when I'm filling in my carbon footprint over the months, I can see seasonal changes because it's getting winter. So we're using more more heating to get a little bit warmer in the office. But also, if the sales are going a bit less good, you'll see the changes, etc., etc. When we're looking here at the top, we can switch between our reporting years. I've not filled in anything for 2022, also not for 2024, but we're currently in 23. And of course, you can also zoom in into these different scopes, because every scope is a different, has different rules, so to say, also for your reduction activity. So for example, if we want to dive into scope 1, we click on scope 1. And then over here, we can see the impact of scope 1 over time. We see our total impact in scope 1 listed here on the left side, and also what is the contribution of scope 1 to our total carbon footprint. And here at the bottom, you can see the list of impact items going from high to low. So if we look here in our Peters Incorporated, we can see that company vehicles driving on gasoline have an emission of 19.36 ton of CO2 equivalent, with a contribution to the total carbon footprint of 9.4%. Same goes for natural gas. We're consuming natural gas on site. It has an emission of 18.57 and is contributing with 9% to our total. Of course, all the environments are the same for your, to make everything extra clear. When we are switching to the final one, the scope 3, you can also see that we have some more emission sources over here. Then when we are going back to the total, in the total overview, there's always only your top 5 listed here of all the scopes combined. So here you can really see what has the highest contribution to your carbon footprint of your organization. I hope this makes everything a little bit clear. We're now switching back to our presentation and already diving into our final bit. Share. So, just a quick recap. What have we done? We have determined our scope and therefore predetermined what emission sources we are going to include and where we are going to collect our data on. We've discussed this with our team before we started our actual data collection. For data collection, we are using a spreadsheet or Excel or anything else that you want to pre-organize yourself on the data collection before you are actually going to the next step and doing your actual carbon footprint assessment in the Hedgehog Carbon Dashboard. Going to the final question of today's webinar, how are we going to use these insights of the business carbon footprint? I want to dive into 2 subtopics here. First of all, how are you going to put this into place when you are doing a carbon reduction strategy first? So put it in the bigger picture. And second, quickly diving into only reporting purposes of your carbon footprint. So strategy building. We've started with an assessment. Bravo, we have just completed our assessment with our 3-step approach. That means that we can now go to step number 2 of our next 3-step approach. Why did we do this business carbon footprint? We've done this because when you know where you are, it's a lot easier to plan where you want to go. And with the insights of your business carbon footprint, you can plan your carbon reduction strategy very effectively. So let's quickly dive back into our single overview, just to give you a little bit of an idea. Of course, this overview is for any organization very, very different. If you are a service provider, you will see that you have very different emission sources that are contributing to your carbon footprint to when you are a manufacturer or when you are a retailer or when you are a pension fund. So really, this really depends on what kind of organization you are. Take these insights. So, for example, if we put it in perspective of the menu of our Hedgehog night lamp production facility, we see that 50% of the impact of the carbon footprint is actually in the use of sold products, which was the electricity consumption of our Hedgehog night lights over their lifetime. So, when I look at that, and then I can think to myself and with my team, we can think, 50% of the carbon footprint. How could we lower that? Well, maybe we can switch to LED lights in our Hedgehog night lights, reducing the energy consumption over the lifetime by, let's say, 80%. And then we can put that into our next period's carbon assessment. And you can very easy plan your carbon reduction strategy with these insights. Another thing, for example, when we look to the second one, we can also see, okay, there's 10% contribution of purchased goods and services, but maybe the lights are already fully constructed out of wood or fully manufactured from wood, and there must be light in there, so there are no options to further reduce that emission source. That's also a very important thing to acknowledge. And then you can determine together with your team to not do anything about the design of your lights, but to switch to the energy consumption or fuel consumption of your company's car park. With these insights, it's very easy to go step by step and to really think with your team, hey, these emission sources we have the power to reduce something on, and these emission sources we cannot do anything about, and we will just let them be for the time being. Then, of course, no strategy without implementation. Again, the role of the Hedgehog Carbon Dashboard here is also very, very, facilitating. You can monitor your progress over time in your dashboard, of course, so you can see whether reduction measures have actually contributed or have made sense. But very important is actually the second part. You communicate the progress of your carbon footprint, and therefore you can mobilize your team, because everyone has to change. People are afraid that they have to hand in their gasoline car and have to drive electric, or they don't want to switch iron nails for wooden nails, or we've heard the strangest reasons why people in a team do not want to change. So communication is really key here to mobilizing your colleagues and to take them on this journey towards more sustainable performance of your business, of your organization. Finally, another important thing to note is that you can spread the measures over the time. This is mostly, of course, a financial reason, because if I have, for example, a car park that is just new with 5-year leasing agreements, you do not want to give the leasing company or pay a fee to the leasing company to immediately switch to electric vehicles, but you might want to wait a year or 2 or 3 so that your fine is not too high there. Then, second thing that we want to discuss quickly here, how to use my insights from the Hedgehog Carbon Dashboard, or your business carbon footprint, I must say, is reporting and communication. Specifically, a short slide on that part. First of all, please write a GHG protocol report when you are doing your carbon footprint, so that you can communicate it to the outside world, but also for yourself, because if you're looking back after 6 months or 8 months, it might be quite nice to have a little report there that has been written according to GHG protocol, which tells you what assumptions you've made and what calculation procedures and data collection procedures you have followed all those months before. If you have the GHG protocol report, this is a formal reporting standard. It's not an obligatory, it's a voluntary, but it is a formal reporting standard according to ISO standardization. And therefore, it's very convenient to put the GHG protocol report as an appendix, or as an appendix or attachment in your CSR report, or in your company's impact report, or however it is called for your specific organization. And then we have a part of voluntary reporting initiatives and other labels. So, for example, think of EcoVadis, or the B Corp standard, or the CDP, the Carbon Disclosure Platform. All these voluntary carbon disclosure initiatives and labels allow or require a GHG protocol report as a proof that you've actually done your carbon footprint, and also to argument and support your process. Then switching quickly, noting to obligatory reporting. So the CSRD, very infamous at the moment. The Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive is also ESRS, as we call it. The reporting pillar number 1 is on climate impact, requires you to do a business carbon footprint, and allows you to do that according to GHG protocol. Or I'm saying allows you to do, but recommends you to do this according to GHG protocol. Yeah, closing off this webinar. First of all, use the Hedgehog Carbon Dashboard, use the free version, create clarity and sustainability for your organization. You will have all your emissions in one single place, and of course, it allows you to do a self-start with this free version. When you are a bit more of a complex organization, or you simply want to have a larger in-depth idea of the impact in, for example, your canteen emissions, other procurement, then we are there for guiding you with the pro version, where we really build your organizations, or your organization's tailor-made emission database, so that you can have a full robustness of insights and a high level of detail of insights in your organization's carbon footprint. Finally, I also want to mention that we have some more sources available on our website. There should be a pop-up with a little link to the carbon calculator. Otherwise, just simply visit our website. We have the Carbon Calculator University, explaining you everything that I've explained in this webinar. There is the product overview that tells you a little bit more about the use of our Hedgehog Carbon Dashboard. And also, when you're diving into our knowledge base, you can find a guide to carbon accounting to really help you out in official carbon accounting for your organization. We have a few minutes left that we want to have for questions. So please feel free to put them in the chat, and we can discuss them at the moment. Now I am looking to my technical support on the left. Okay. For now we will have we will end up this webinar. If there is any unclarity or any things that you want to follow up upon, please send me an email or my team on the info@hhc.earth, or give us a call, of course. Feel free to reach out for any purpose. For now, thank you very, very much for your attendance. This webinar will also be sent to you on your email address, and we will also publish this webinar in the end on our Carbon Calculator University. Thank you very much for your attention, and have a wonderful week.